Hi everyone, my name is Weronika and I'm a third year student of economics at UCL. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is pretty much this big mystery thing that a lot of people feel very stressed about in university, and that is looking for, applying and finding an internship. I want this to kind of be a video that I personally would like to have watched a year ago when I was applying for my internships, because when I was starting my second year, I was really lost and I was applying for a lot of things and writing all my applications, and I wasn't sure how to structure them, when to send the applications. It was just a big mess that I had to figure out and navigate on my own, and I think having a little help is always useful. So I'm here to kind of help you, give you some of my tips, explain how the process goes, what are the stages, and how to make sure that you actually get that return offer and have a summer internship. So as I mentioned, I'm already in my third year. I know, scary. And this summer, between my second and third year, I did an internship at an economic consultancy called Frontier Economics. It was actually an internship in Brussels, which was quite interesting. It was the company that I wanted to get into the most. And I feel like because I undertook specific steps to help me succeed, I was kind of able to get that position that I wanted. There's also a resource which I would like to mention, which is UCL Careers. It's very helpful in terms of any kind of applications, whether that's internships or jobs later in life. You can book a session with a career advisor who's going to help you kind of determine maybe what you want to go into, what kind of things you want to apply for, or later on while you're like writing your CV, drafting it, you can book a one-on-one session where they kind of like review it and have a look at it. I think that's really useful as well. I remember I did that. So definitely do use that, and UCL Careers will be linked in the description below. So without further ado, let's talk about logistics, how to prepare your application, how to actually find out what internship you want to do, and how to go on all about that. So I would say the timeline of your internship applications will really vary depending on the industry and the type of internship you want to get into. I was personally applying to a lot of economics/management consultancies, which have quite like a structured application process, and it begins quite early, but it really varies on your industry. Some applications may close as early as in like September or October if it's like investment banks maybe, and some applications literally like you can still apply in spring. That's why I would recommend you to do your research. Just beware of the deadlines and the significant dates and when you should start like thinking of it or actually working on your CV, cover letter, etc., so that you're not like completely surprised that everything is closed by like January. I'm not saying that's the case, don't stress out, but it's really good to know these things in advance before even beginning your application process. So how to actually find an internship that you would like to do. This depends on whether you know which industry you want to go in. If you already know that you want to apply, for example, for a neuroscience research internship, it already gives you that advantage because you have an idea of what you want to do. But also, again, don't stress out. Like if you have no clue what to apply for, but you would like an internship, what I would recommend doing is just Googling like jobs after and your degree. So for example, like jobs after economics. That's what I literally did, and that's how I also like found out about a lot of different types of jobs that people have, because I feel like it's a topic that's like not often talked about, and you kind of do have to do your own research about that. Once you find something that you're interested in, I would look up companies within that sector. So for example, for me, that was economic consulting, as I said. That was like my number one priority, but as I said, I also applied for some management consultancies as well as I think research agencies, think tanks. There was like a lot of things I applied for. And so I would say just look up the companies like economic consulting, Internship London, for example, things like that, and you'll eventually find a decent list. The third step is making a spreadsheet, and I think it's very important. I know it sounds so boring and you just want to skip over this part, but hear me out. Making a spreadsheet will take you 20 minutes, and it will be your lifesaver because you'll be easily able to track all of your like deadlines, start dates of applying, links to applications, outcome of your process, because if you're sending out a lot of applications, you may sometimes get lost whether you've actually gotten a response from that company, so whether you need to send a follow-up email. And just fill it in as you go based on the information on the website. And number 4, after you have that spreadsheet with all the companies that you want to apply to, I would suggest narrowing down depending on how many positions you have on your list. Like if it's 10, I think that's fine, but I personally think, and this may be a little controversial, but like quality over quantity when it comes to internships. For me, I truly wanted to get an internship in economic consulting, and I also, as I said, applied to like 20 management consulting internships, even though I knew I literally don't want to do that job. And I think that was purposeless on my side, but it's just because so many people stress me out by saying, it's a numbers game. It's like you have to apply to as many as you can. If you want any internship, then yes, it's a numbers game. But if you want an internship that you'll actually enjoy and that you'll get something out of, think about that. If you apply for internships that you actually don't want to get and you'll end up getting them, you'll spend like your summer working at a company that you don't like, in an industry that you don't care about. Like you're not going to gain any relevant experience because it's not even an industry that you want to go into. So I think I applied to like 30 places, which was a bit excessive. I think 10, 20 is plenty, but obviously that will depend on you. So like take my advice with a grain of salt and, you know, adjust it to your kind of situation. So now let's talk about more of the practical stuff that you have to prepare for your application, and that is CV and cover letter. We'll start with the CV. Every place that you apply for will require a CV, like I guarantee that. Some places may not require a cover letter, but I would say if it's like, for example, called optional cover letter, still write it, because that's just going to show that you actually care and are committed to like that company, or like at least, you know, you've done your research. It makes you stand out for sure in a pool of just CVs without cover letters. Like think about that. When it comes to CVs, there are plenty of information sources, templates online that you can use and find out how to write your CV. I just prefer to keep it like simple, minimalistic, black font, no pictures, quite, you know, to the point, straight up, no elaborative language. Keep it professional. I don't know how else to put it. I'm going to tell you about the bits that I had on my CV, by the way. Like this is how I'm going about it. The information that you should contain on your CV include like your contact details, so your name at the top, and then maybe your phone and your email, maybe your address. The next bit is education, and on that I have included which university I'm going to, what degree I'm pursuing, what relevant modules I took in first and second year. If you scored high in your first year, maybe include that grade as well. Like mention it that you scored like 70% or something, for example. And I also included my high school because I got quite a high score from my like IB diploma. I keep that section like short at the beginning. And the next part that I have on my CV is like work and leadership experience. I don't know why I called it that way. I think it was in a template, so I just used it. By the way, you shouldn't go above 1 page on your CV. Maybe I should have mentioned that earlier. What I do usually is I include the company / like organization name that I like had a position at, or like did an experience at. Then I include my position. On the right hand side, I write the dates, and then I write 1, 2, 3 bullet points depending on like the scope of the experience and the length of the experience, about the things I did there, about my responsibilities, maybe outcomes, results of that project, initiative, whatever that is. And if you're kind of like not sure what to put on there because you're like, oh, I never worked at a company, like obviously like you're a second or third year student, like no one's expecting you to actually have a full-time employment in like your desired industry. So the things you can include is like committee positions, maybe you've organized some conferences, maybe you've had a little research project, you know, just basically your experiences that show that you're a committed individual, that you're quite ambitious. The next part on my CV I have is volunteering experience and interests, and in that I just included 2 things, and I think that was like some climate activism that I did in high school. I was a part of this like initiative, and I also included my YouTube channel on my CV. I know it may sound a little bit silly, but to be fair, it shows that I'm creative. I can organize my time well. I am able to kind of engage people in my content. You know, whatever shows that you're like being a proactive individual, even if you're in your free time and like doing things in your life. And the last bit I have, very short, is just like language and IT skills, and in that I just simply list the languages that I speak, and in brackets I put the proficiency basically, and then IT skills I just put like the programs that I can kind of work around, which is like Excel or Stata, things like that, whatever, you know, maybe coding languages if you know any, that will be very useful for sure, and you can put it there. Now, as I said, after you've written your CV and it's all polished up, it's time to write your cover letter. You won't have to write a new one for every single place you apply to, but you will have to change certain paragraphs and sentences. It really depends on your industry, and I can also only talk about my experience. So again, in the header I had my name in bold, then under that my contact details, and then what I had was 3 paragraphs. So the first one was why this company, the second was why this specific profession, job, and the third one is why me. So for the first section, why this company, I would just recommend doing your research about the firm you're applying for, what they specialize in, what kind of projects or initiatives they've done before, and you know, just kind of try to convey the message that like, I'm interested in this and this thing, and I see that you're doing a lot of work in that, you know, field, industry, and I'm really curious to find out more about it, and that's, you know, why I follow the work of your company closely, like things like that. The second one, as I mentioned, is like, why this profession, why this career? And I know you may not be like fully decided on this specific job or industry you're going into, but you do kind of have to convince the recruitment team that like you actually have done your research about the job and what it implies, and you're not just applying for whatever. I would mention specific attributes of the job or like skills that are required that you possess, how this job aligns with your interests. Every paragraph, as you can see, like you kind of have to adjust it to yourself and make it personal. That's very, very important. And then for the like why me section, I know it may be like the hardest to write, but it's really, again, not the time to be shy or like undermine your experiences. Like, be confident, but also not cocky. Usually firms will have like a list of desired qualities or like the ideal candidate list. So see what they're paying attention to, see what kind of skills or qualities or soft skills they want in their interns, and think about your experiences and pick elements from those experiences, maybe specific responsibilities, specific aspects of certain projects that you did that show that you have this quality. For example, for some companies, maybe it's important that they want more creative problem-solving people, and for other ones, they really want good communicators. Do think about how you match the job description and kind of, again, adjust your experiences and show that you are a good fit. And so lastly, I will talk about interviews, which is probably the most daunting part of the application process for a lot of people, because it is like a face-to-face interaction with another human. You often feel you're on the spot and you have to answer questions. And that's why I think good preparation beforehand and kind of thinking about the possible questions that may be asked and what your answer to these questions would be is really, really helpful to kind of relieve the stress and relieve the pressure and make you feel prepared and just confident in your skills and like your ability to get that job. The recruiter can actually verify whether you have the desired skills, whether you actually did those stuff that you told about in your CV, and whether you're just, like a likable, communicative, approachable person that they would like to work with, which is very important. Like, don't underestimate the importance of soft skills here as well. So how I prepared for my interview is basically, as I mentioned, like I kind of anticipated what kind of questions may be asked, and I scripted out like outlines of the answers that I would like to give, so I wouldn't really memorize them like word to word. So the questions that like you can definitely anticipate and are probably very likely to show up on the interview is: why this profession? Why this company? Why do you think you're a good fit up for this company? Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your education and your university course. These are staple questions that you probably will be asked at some point or another, if not at every interview. And secondly, behavioral questions. It's something that it's quite like an odd concept to me, is those questions which start with like, tell me about a time that you XYZ. So like, tell me about a time that you led a team, or like, tell me about a time you solved a difficult problem or overcame an obstacle in your life. And this is, again, something that you can think like about your answers beforehand. And also there's this like well-known method, it's called STAR, I think, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. You can look it all up. I'm not going to explain it now because I don't really have the time, but it's the common way of approaching those types of questions so that your answer is really to the point and you're not just talking about one aspect of the answer for too long. But also, additionally keep in mind that there probably always will be questions that you do not anticipate beforehand, because that's also the purpose of the interview, is to see whether you're just a person that can be talked to and can answer questions on the spot and not just like recite your answers that you prepared beforehand, because they already read your CV. They already know you're probably, talented, skillful, and you have the abilities and experiences that they want. And then my general tip during an interview is to just, dress professionally, even if it's a Zoom call, like, still keep it in mind. Be polite, smile, ask questions back, like show your interest and that you've done your research about the company. And so this is it. I kind of try to squeeze in as much of my knowledge as I can, but again, like, do your research and I'm sure you'll find many more useful resources and information online. The last disclaimer that I want to make before I say goodbye is like, internships at the end of the day are not the end all or be all of your life, of your university career. Even if you don't manage to get one, you still probably learn so much throughout the application process and you get familiar with it, which is really crucial. And it's just always a valuable experience, even if it may seem like a really negative thing in the moment if you, for example, don't manage to get one. But hopefully with all these tips and the adequate preparation, you will be able to land one. And if you do, then congratulations. I know you probably worked very hard for it. And absolutely last thing that I'm going to mention, do remember to take care of your mental health throughout the whole process. Do not put it aside for the sake of applications, because at the end of the day, your mental health is what matters the most, and you should not comprise it for some professional experiences for your CV. But yeah, that's everything for this video. Thank you very much for watching and good luck with your applications.